Элита, ваш проводник в мир грядущего. Добро пожаловать на международный симпозиум «Создавая будущее» в Национальном центре «Россия». Я рада приветствовать вас на этом важном событии. Уверена, это будет увлекательное путешествие в мир идей и новых возможностей. Мы начинаем. Обратный отсчет. 3, 2, 1. Мысль человека — это базовая единица его существования. Появляясь из ниоткуда, она формирует идею, которая способна, подобно межзвездному объекту, преодолевать гравитацию гения своего создателя. Идея прокладывает собственный курс, трансформируя на своем пути окружающую реальность. От городов-крепостей к огромным мегаполисам. От берестяных грамот и пергамента к квантовым суперкомпьютерам. От одного мечтательного взгляда на небо до космических путешествий. Идеи превращаются в стремления, а стремления формируют наши достижения.
Мне даже в голову не приходило, что когда-нибудь смогу увидеть и коснуться рукой человека, который вернулся из космоса на Землю. Станислав Лем.
Добро пожаловать на международный симпозиум «Создавая будущее». Невозможное сегодня станет возможным завтра. Константин Циолковский. На сцену приглашается первый заместитель руководителя администрации президента Российской Федерации, председатель Организационного комитета Национального центра «Россия» Сергей Владиленович Кириенко.
Dear friends, dear participants and guests of the International Symposium Inventing the Future, first of all, please allow me to perform the instruction given to me by President Vladimir Putin and read his words of welcome to the participants, organizers, and guests of the International Symposium Inventing the Future. Dear friends, I welcome you at the International Symposium Inventing the Future, the very first major event of the National Russia Center. It is to have a serious and substantive conversation about strategic future plans, about the way we look and see our future. And the forum, for that reason, has brought together the representatives of different professions, ages, and generations, writers and philosophers, scientists, and culture figures, young people. I'm confident that despite the current challenges that we are facing today, we need to set before ourselves tasks that go ahead of time and chart new breakthrough areas and look beyond the horizons of tomorrow. Let me emphasize the most important thing. Our future must be determined by ourselves and nobody else, based on our sovereign world outlook, national culture, continuous and unstoppable search, creative search, and firm commitment to our moral and patriotic ideas and values. And then the most daring dreams will definitely come true. Our people has, for its 1,000-year history, has proven that many times. It has created a great country and opened the road to these stars for the mankind and ensured that our country is the leader in using peaceful nuclear energy and made a lot of discoveries, major discoveries in science and geography. And we and the future generations should be worthy of our fathers, grandfathers, and ancestors. I wish you a lot of success and all the best. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. Dear friends, I would like to thank all the guests at this symposium. We have here partners and participants from 100 countries of the world that definitely represent the absolute majority of people living on this wonderful planet of ours. It is very important for us. You know that exactly on the day a year ago, on the 4th of November, 2023, Moscow hosted the opening of the International Russia Exhibition Forum at the Exhibition Center in nearly a year. It was visited by visitors from 120 countries of the world, millions of them, and it showed how important and useful it is for our own citizens and for visitors from other countries to know about the accomplishments of our people, about its history, culture, traditions, and today's promise of our country. The National Center Russia that we are at today was created at the decision of our president as a follow-on to the work of that forum and exhibition Russia. It is very astute and apt that it is beginning its operation with the very first international symposium, an exhibition that is dedicated to our look into the future. It is not fortuitous that the opening of the exhibition and the National Center and the International Symposium fall on a very important day for Russia, our national holiday, the Unity Day. It is a holiday that goes back into history with its roots, the traditions of our multi-ethnic people. 400 years ago, people of different nationalities and different faiths joined their forces to defend the sovereignty and independence of their country. It is part of the traditions and culture of Russia. In our country, we have 194 different nationalities and ethnic groups. And therefore, Russia's culture is about a respectful attitude towards history and tradition of all peoples, not just those living in our country, but every people, every nationality and ethnic group around our great planet. The unity of the people is determined not only by its traditions, but also by their vision of the future and their dream, if you will. And of course, we have been dreaming of a sovereign and strong country, of a fair world system, a world order where people of all nationalities, of all countries, every individual will have an opportunity to unleash their potential, be happy, be successful, live in a safe and fair world. And those who gathered at this international symposium today are making a tremendous contribution to all of that. It is impossible to determine whose contribution is more important, that of scientists that propel the science forward and create the future, writers, sci-fi writers that are ahead of our times with their insights and create the future, allowing us to extend the horizon of opportunities and giving us the ability to see our dreams come true. Those who work in the creative world, the engineers, everyone makes a contribution to the future of their own and of their country, of their people, and of humankind in general. Would like to thank you for your active participation in the work of this symposium, for being dedicated and for dreaming. We are confident that as a result of the conversation that is taking place in Moscow now at the Symposium Inventing the Future, dreams will be geared towards something together, something joined. And here at this exhibition we have great examples of how dreams, once they've emerged, that seemed to be impossible at the time, but then they became possible thanks to those people who were not afraid to dare to dream And it is thanks to their efforts those dreams came true. And I'm confident that the same thing is going to happen to those dreams that are going to be discussed today at this symposium, and that the dream of every one of you will be materialized and will be part of the future of our great planet. Thank you and happy holiday.
Благодарим вас,
Thank
Сергей
you,
Владимирович.
Mr. Kirienko. We now turn to the plenary discussion dedicated to philosophy of the future. I'm inviting to the stage the moderators of today's discussion, Marina, a deputy of the State Duma of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, TV presenter, and Kirill Tokarev, editor-in-chief and anchor of the RBC TV channel. Dear guests, we are very pleased to welcome you to the first International Symposium Inventing the Future. First of all, congratulations on our great holiday, the Unity Day. Today, we've been joined by scientists and science fiction writers, futurologists, philosophers, representatives of the creative industry, cultural environment, government authority representatives, industry and business communities from more than 100 countries. Today at the symposium, we have already started a major discussion about what our tomorrow will be like and how we are creating it now. It is no coincidence that the symposium was the first event to open at this venue on the National Unity Day. It is also quite symbolic that it is happening today, because the task of the National Center is not only to demonstrate the achievements of our country, but also to create new meanings and search for new tasks and images and many other things. As part of the symposium, more than 60 events will be held. They will be dedicated to the future of the entire mankind and the way technologies are impacting that, and the changes that are going through our multipolar world, and what is going to happen to our civilization and different civilizations within it. We believe that the discussions that will unfold here today will be the start of a productive international dialogue about the future of mankind. Today's plenary discussion will be held in the format of an open dialogue. Together with my colleague Kirill Tokarev, we will talk to 6 experts who have already looked several steps ahead, maybe even decades ahead. In many ways, the idea behind the symposium was the result of the mutual influence of creativity and scientific progress. And I would like to start by talking about the seemingly unobvious connection between those who define the horizons of dreaming and those who conquer those horizons. We know how to conquer those and identify those things. It is my great pleasure to invite to the stage to discuss these really important issues and global issues our speakers. The president of the National Research Center, Kurchatov Institute, Mikhail Kovalchuk, and architect of buildings of the future and founder of Cybertecture, Mr. James Law. Your round of applause, dear guests. We have so many countries of the world present here, so many brightly dressed participants and attendees. Please have a seat. Let's support our speakers, and again, Happy Unity Day. Mr. Kovalchuk, we're really delighted to welcome you, as always. And you have the honor of answering the most global issue. We're talking about the future of mankind. We're trying to look 10, 20, even 100 years ahead. What priorities for the development of the human civilization in terms of scientific and technological progress do you see? Thank you very much. I'm delighted to see so many representatives of the entire world here, and I'm sure that our future will be cloudless and beautiful, since we've been able to gather here. Well, speaking about the way I see the future, that's what you're after. Yes, I'd like to find out. Here's what I will start with. We need to realize that whenever you are asked what are the priorities for the development of civilization and science, I'm always saying that for hundreds of years, those priorities have not changed. They remain the same. Just imagine the composer is thinking about a new tune. How do we know that he has it? He needs to make it material, physical. He needs paper, ink, a musical instrument for that. And only after that we will hear that melody, that tune that was born in that person's brain. An artist has this image of a future painting. How do we know that the painting exists? It has to become a reality. It has to materialize itself. You need an easel, you need canvas, you need brushes, you need paint, and that will produce a painting. Okay, let's take a poet. Pushkin came up with Yevgeny Onegin. And how would we know how that idea came to his mind? For that, you need to take alphabet, letters, make syllables, words, and then that text will materialize and we'll understand how it's happening. And the same is happening with scientists. They use 10 digits, and every one of those individuals, composers, artists, architects, scientists, poets, they create universes out of a very small number of symbols. Now, let's talk about matter. Matter is always a priority, but to create matter, you need energy. And there are two eternal priorities, matter and energy. So we saw the picture of our president on the picture. He looked at me once, and he would also say the soul. And the third priority is the soul or intellect, one's intelligence, and not artificial one, but the natural one. And I would like to say that the whole civilization and Russia in particular have always had a tremendous material, energetic power and material base to work on, and I'm sure that the future will be cloudless. No, Mr. Kovalchuk, but it is clear to me that one of the major resources of the future, in addition to matter, soul, intelligence, and power, we'll talk about those issues. But let me ask you, Mr. Law, speaking about the buildings of the future, spaces of the future, one thinker that is treated differently by people, especially in Russia, he said that one's way of living determines one's conscience, but the cities of the future will definitely affect how we live, how effective our existence is. What are the cities of the future, and how future spaces, from buildings to parks, will be influencing us, and how technologies are impacting architecture now?
The future is entirely going to be about cities. The planet has too many people. And in fact, cities are the greatest design and engineering that human beings have ever created. What we are facing now is the opportunity and the challenge to create cities that are going to be our lifeboats into the future. And these cities need to confront those big systemic issues about the world, population, feeding everyone, keeping everyone safe. Our cities are incredibly inefficient right now. In the future, our cities will be a giant infrastructure, like a giant intelligent machine that keeps us healthy, keeps us informed, keeps our family together, communicate, and also treasure our culture. This will be done using new technologies like AI, quantum computing, new forms of construction, which is no longer about people on site, but robots that are creating the necessary buildings that are going to be adaptive over the future. And certainly the way in which we're going to relate to each other in this intelligent city will be entirely different. I think we will be much more responsive to stimulus from AI. We will communicate without language barriers. We'll be able to remember our grandparents, our great-grandparents, because of the database in the city that has kept their lives continuing. And so what I encourage to say is that cities are perhaps the greatest potential that human civilization can really take upon itself to get it right. And if we do not have to worry about the next 100 years. We don't even have to worry about the next 1,000 years. We need to develop it in a way that's positive for future generations to come.
Well, thank you so much. Very good introduction. But if we talk about the cities of the future, 1,000 years, well, what materials are we talking about?
Materials that we build in from an architectural point of view comes from the planet. But within the next 50 years, we'll be creating new kinds of materials from space, having zero gravity, having new forms of fusion off our planet will make it possible for us to create incredibly efficient materials, things that are going to be incredibly light, incredibly durable, and possibly even very sustainable. So we really have to, open our eyes to the possibilities of change, because the very source of the fabric around us is not really the source that we have now. The source is going to come from the moon, the source is going to come from Mars, the source is going to come from the radiation around our solar system, and these are going to be the new molecules for the development of our cities on our planet, but also probably on the other planets as well. So we can really open our eyes to new materials, new physics, and the ability to really design differently for the future.
Спасибо, господин Ло. Спасибо большое.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Thank you so much. Mikhail, back to you. One more question for you. I mean, I personally am very happy for this first symposium to take place here, and that is called Inventing the Future. And I think it should be proactive. We need to look for new definitions, and perhaps there should be some goals, if not specific, but goals common for the humankind. We have representatives from dozens of countries. Later about that. But what is your opinion? Do we need to invent a future and have more or less robust borders? The humankind has been thinking and dreaming about the future, but to create and invent the future, well, if we have time, I'd be more than happy to talk about cities of the future, because I have a kind of different point of view about that. But speaking about technology, well, it's not by chance I was telling you about the matter, the energy. Well, when the president has announced the special military operation, well, apart from the goals, there's one more symbol, one more sign for the whole world. Putin has reminded the world that the world is material, and Russia is one of the most important integral part of this material world. No matter what cities we come up with, no matter what future we have in mind, without matter, without material resources and energy, there'll be nothing. So it depends on what materials are we going to invent and how are we going to use the energy, but that's another story. One thing to remember is that no one is thinking that AI is pure electricity. Well, I can't go into details. Yes, it's pure electricity. And when no one ever heard about AI, in the Soviet Union, we had a SCADA system, and that's what is called now AI. And our shuttle, Buran, traveled into space, and it was automatic. And all of a sudden it has disappeared, vanished in the thin air, and then it came back and landed. So when it landed, the AI back then, it wasn't called that, it thought that the speed was way too high, and no one ever managed to make it happen again. So that's AI. So one thing to remember, that there's no future without matter and energy, and the president of our country has reminded the whole world about it. Now, all the military actions taking place right now, they have to do with only one thing. That is the system that we have created, the economic system, the technosphere. It was there to satisfy the needs of only golden billion countries. And Vernadsky, the great scientist, said that this system was to meet the needs of the golden billion, but as long as it extends to India, no one ever spoke about China back then, our planet will be different, and we'll come to understand that resources we have are not enough. So we can see it now. So everything that is happening now is a battle for resources. People are fighting for resources. So we are self-sufficient. We have all we need. We have the technology, resources, intellect, you name it. So we need to be strong so that no one would ever have this idea to try and attack us. Point number two, we are never going to attack anyone. We don't need anything from anyone. We're self-sufficient. We'd be happy to share, but we need to talk. So there's one more thing. What is the problem? We are witnessing the war for resources. And just recently we saw that the nuclear triad is the strongest and the best. But there's more. The thing is, we need to understand that there's something else apart from this war for resources. For example, new technology. We have the ideology, we have the development strategy, we have convergence technology, and these are the technology that are part of nature, not violating the harmony that we have. And it restores what we have already managed to damage. If we have time, I'll have more to say. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mikhail. Mr. Law, then a question to you too. To follow up on what Mikhail just said, we see the global trend. It's characteristic for the Eastern and Western countries. Well, there are exceptions, but nevertheless, we see that cities are getting bigger. There are megacities, people moving from rural locations to the cities, the population is increasing. So we're talking about really serious redistribution of different resources, energy, material, and other resources. So we're talking about survival, high-quality survival of the humankind. And it's about the level of life, the standard of living, potable water, and the biggest resources that Russia has. But speaking about the future of cities and urban administration, what it would look like? Would it be 100% urban, only cities, or will we see elimination of digital inequality? And is it possible to go back to the village, to the country?
Very difficult question. What I would like to say is everything that we think about the modern city today, whether it's Moscow or Hong Kong, my home, Dubai, Tokyo, London, the city of the future will be totally different. It will not be like this. My personal belief is that if we are going to continue to live on this planet and our cities are going to be these giant metropolises housing billions, if not even 1 trillion people, our future cities needs to become what we call a second nature, another form of nature, a nature in version 2 that is symbiotic with nature version 1. And if we take on this kind of philosophy, what we are going to build, what we're going to produce in terms of our lives in our cities is not going to be counter to our own planet's ecosystem. We are creating another nature which is feeding into the existing nature, but also getting something out. I think this is also something which is extremely obvious now. I have a personal philosophy called God's telescope. Let me explain to you. So I think God is the only entity that can look on our planet and look at the history and the trends of the whole planet throughout history. And I think he will see that right at this moment in the 21st century, we are facing systemic major problems on this planet, whether it's the relationship between ourselves, the politics, to the breakdown of the economic kind of balance between how we produce and how we consume, to actually us damaging the entire planet in terms of its ecosystem, the environment, everything like this. So God can see this. But God has made this happen because from the telescope, this right now is the greatest moment in the history of humanity. Because when we realize this, this is the greatest challenge that we can take on together. And I think cities will become part of that equation, how we develop a second nature that balances and solves all of these problems and create what we call a new renaissance of man. Another renaissance where we celebrate our lives, celebrate each other's existence, celebrate the culture that we create, and most importantly, celebrate our future.
Спасибо большое. Не зря наша дискуссия называется.
Well, thank you so much. It's not by chance that our discussion is called the philosophy of the future. Thank you. That was quite interesting. Mikhail, do you think it's a pivotal point for the humankind and the human civilization? Well, one thing. Well, back in the Newton's times, there was only one science, natural philosophy. But back then, we didn't know what nature was. And we started taking bits and pieces here and there. And we came up with a system of science and education. We have hundreds of disciplines, subjects based on that. And then we came up with economy. But the thing is, we're living during the revolutionary times, and humanitarian and natural sciences come together. So we go back to the natural philosophy, but on a different level. It's a completely different understanding of the details. And that's what nature-like technology are based on. We don't have much time, but I would like to respond to the urban story that you mentioned. Nature-like technology. Well, they allow us to build a different kind of economy, which means that, in general, if we take big cities, well, we had factories, plants, and they needed people. People needed to be fed. They needed to live somewhere. You need to make them safe. Take Hong Kong or Moscow, gazillions of problems. But now, let's call it COVID, for example, new challenges, biohazards. So it's like plague back in the Middle Ages. So one of the options for our future development is creating a bio-eco settlement, because we have the biggest biomass in our possession. So we turn it into energy. That's what we can do. We can make biogas. We can do many things. For example, take methane, natural gas. We can turn it into protein for cattle. And we've been doing it dozens of years ago. And when people say, we don't want to buy gas from you, fine. We can sell this gas in a different format, for example, proteins, and get much more. So taking into account the huge territory of our country, nuclear power plants, small nuclear power plants, portable stations, and all the equipment and nature-like equipment, we can process biomass and we can create the high quality of life. We can ensure new living standards for our people in small settlements, for example, which is crucial for Russia and for other countries too. But for Russia, because we have plenty of territory, it's huge, and we can create much more. We already have drawings in place, and our colleague has designed a really beautiful building just right here around the corner. Would be happy to share how it works, because this would help us debottleneck many bottlenecks that we have, and that will be another step towards creating and inventing the new future. And one more thing, we'll be able to keep ourselves safe from different hazards because the population density would not be that high. People come to big cities because of the quality of life. It's much better here. But if we can ensure a better living standards in the countryside, no problem. Okay, thank you so much. We have biosettlement project, so global cooperation can already be seen. Well, if very briefly, what is the image of the future in the next 100 years? One word. So, Mr. Law, Mikhail, one word. Mr. Law, please go ahead. Well, in one word, okay, but pretext. You need to always think. For those who don't think, in London, on the street, you can see and read, look to the left. Because if you don't look to the left, you might get under the wheels of a car. So thinking and being creative, that's the basis of the future. So thinking or creating, okay, let's put it on hold for now. Mr. Law, one word.
My one word is life.
Слово «жизнь». Спасибо большое.
Life. Thank you so much. Actually, that was very intelligent, very interesting discussion. Mr. Kovalchuk, Mr. Low, thank you so much. Round of applause to our wonderful, brilliant speakers. So, next part. Thank you so much. Okay. I really hope that in the head of all of us, we will have the image of the future. We have different interesting ideas, but it's complex work, it's hard work, and it requires system kind of approach. So for our next discussion, I would like to discuss to this stage Yuri Vladimirovich Maximov, co-founder of the Cyberus Foundation, and Mr. Majed Mansoori, the Executive Director of the Museum of the Future in the United Arab Emirates. Well, Mr. Kovalchuk was talking about eco-settlements. Well, probably something else, and artificial intelligence will be used there. And bio-risks will be mitigated, but I see more risks. And the future is not always about hope. It may be kind, it may be bright, it may be positive, efficient, and human-centric. But despite everything, the multinational Russian people has traditionally been techno-positive and techno-optimistic. We see the results of all the surveys, and the Soviet people was also techno-optimist. So we still are. But there are some risks. So, Yuri, first question to you. So, I will address you by name if you don't mind. So, several questions. So, what do you think, how ready humankind is for the future, or how ready is Russia for the future? Are we prepared to face those multiple challenges that await us, or even better, what humankind needs to know to mitigate the risks and seize the opportunities that are there, what Russia can and is capable of giving the humankind? So how can we join forces? Where should we join forces? I know many questions, but maybe something, because Mr. Kovalchuk was talking about eco-settlements, biosettlements, and cybersecurity issues. It's quite vulnerable.
Thank you, Kirill. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My answer to this would be as follows. Technology-wise, we are in a state of uncertainty, as in quantum physics. Right now, we can choose either to go towards more technology or towards less technology. And we have a number of problems with technology. Number one, as humankind, we have stopped working on general things in a great swarm of technologies. Everyone is focused on our own YouTube, to speak. TikTok, Vkontakte, YouTube. We are making messengers of different type, WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, and so on. Can you imagine how many resources are being spent by mankind to reproduce the same technology with some economical benefit, instead of developing standards and agreeing on how to move to a new level of technology as the civilization? We are going back to what has already been done just for the benefit of today. The other problem is that technologies have become increasingly complex, and it may not be noticeable by regular people, but researchers and developers see that. So we are mostly seeing DIY approach to servers and technologies, and you need a lot of people to make that work, be that at the level of the state, the level of the country, or what level of companies. And everyone who's involved in this is also responsible for security. You do something wrongly and things will fall apart. That is one of the major problems. And the third issue is that the architecture of our digital world, technological world, partially has been done by someone. It was built the way we see it by the West. And if we look closely, we would see that architecture-wise, those technologies do not provide us with that level of sovereignty and security that we would like to have. So it appears that no matter what we touch, the manufacturer and the country of the manufacturer has some kind of cutoff switch that allows them to turn your device off. And hackers would use the same mechanisms to make damage. And so, in the end, what are those technologies made for? To serve people or to serve their manufacturers? And that is the major challenge that mankind is facing now. We either continue going down the path that we have been going for decades, copying technology, or we start rebuilding our technology and revamping it. I have formulated this for myself, the following. What are we expecting from technologies? We want them to serve people, but not at the expense of people's safety, security, and freedom. And to answer your specific question about what we as the country can do to the rest of the world, or can provide the rest of the world, our country is huge, a great country. And regardless of disagreements, and regardless of where you are, still in Russia or outside of the country, we can provide a lot of different important things. Russia has always been known for its great engineers, our engineering school, the way we know how to create technology. And that may not be noticeable in the world right now, but that's a tremendous school that we can contribute to the creation of the new infrastructure. Then the hacking approach, in the good sense of the world. This world needs to be hacked. That old approach that stopped working the way we wanted to. And we are, deep down, we are Russian hackers. We are always ready to try something out. We want to see whether it can work the other way. And based on the above, I'd like to say that a Russian has this acute sense of fairness and justice, and we are not now in a state where it can be called a just state. And these three factors that I've outlined, they can allow us to get into this major cooperation of many countries that need to be involved. And maybe right now Western countries are self-isolating, insisting on their way of doing things, but sooner or later they will join us in building the new world because it's a better world. And their people also need their sovereignty and security, and as our people or people living in India and China. And I'm confident that we will create an infrastructure similar to a cyber UN, United Nations, because right now the United Nations is balancing between different political forces and has lost a lot of its power. But in the digital world, we need to build things together. We need to formulate the principles upon which this is going to be built. And not all countries have access to those technologies they need for that. So this is the task of those that are strong, to see how that is going to be used by the weak. So we need to ensure that we can make technologies that will not make the citizens and the governments to play cat and mouse. Remember what happened with the telegram. Somebody is taking a technology and others will use it to fight the state. And that's wrong. Future technologies should be created in such a way so that within those technologies you would be able to create the functionality for the users and for the government. Law enforcement should be embedded in these technologies, and so on and so forth. I would stop here, and we will continue this discussion later on as we continue our dialogue. Thank you. Thank you. Indeed, the image of the Russian hackers is something that has been portrayed in Russian cinema and world cinema, and Russian hackers are always fighting for justice and the just world. So they will be enthusiastic about building this just and digital future world. We're moving on to our next guest. We're really delighted to welcome you at our symposium, Mr. Mansoori. We have this global task of making sure that the technologies that we use, bring them together and make sure that they provide us with good rather than evil. And this is our home. And our colleagues from the United Arab Emirates, they've created a house that brings us into the future, 50 years into the future, some kind of time machine. Maybe it's best to see it once. And please take a look at the screen.
Welcome to the Museum of the Future.
Well, this applause is for you. You've created a unique, beautiful art object, the Museum of the Future. The demand for that museum is huge. Every time I've been to the United Emirates, I've always seen huge lines. And I know that people, have to wait 3 or 6 months to book a ticket. How this idea was born to create this museum, and why is this museum needed now?
Thank you so much. I mean, the first thing I'd say is if you ever visit Dubai again, we'll make sure you don't have to wait too long for a ticket. The story of the museum is really the story of Dubai. 40, 50 years ago, founding fathers had a vision of what Dubai could be. They made big bets, bets in logistics, making it one of the biggest hubs in logistics in the world, bets in transportation, making Dubai one of the most visited cities in the world right now. And currently the question is, what are they betting on? And the bet is on the mind. It's on its people. And that's why the Museum of the Future exists. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the UAE Vice President, Prime Minister, and ruler of Dubai, he would attend events like this and he would hear conversations about the future. A conversation like Mr. Lowe was saying is how we will use different material into building the cities of the future. Well, in the museum, we're showing how we can mine material from, say, asteroids or from the moon and use 3D printing technology to build a space station in space. It's about showing people things. It's about getting people to imagine what the future would be like. The story started 10 years ago. His Highness came to us with a challenge. And he said, I want you to show me what the government of the future would look like. And we as a team, of course, started thinking, how can we show what the government of the future would be? We decided to go through an immersive route where we created a immersive experience at the World Government Summit, which is a 3-day event that happens in Dubai. World leaders, 3,000 policymakers would come there for 3 days and basically discuss policy making. So we created an experiment, and it was a temporary exhibition, and people would go into that experience and would see what a cabinet of the future would look like, and how decisions are made, how technology will help decision-making become better. And one of the interesting things was there was a proposal to have a Minister of Artificial Intelligence back in 2014. Fast forward 4 years later, His Highness appoints the first AI minister in the world. And it's because the museum served as a platform for His Highness or for visitors to the museum to imagine. That temporary experiment went into a more permanent installation. So His Highness gave us another challenge: create the Museum of the Future for the public. And there was an international competition for understanding what the architecture would look like. And the design that you just saw in the video, and I thought I'd show you because that's the best way for people that haven't been to Dubai or haven't seen the Museum of the Future to imagine, that was the design that I personally hoped His Highness wouldn't choose, because we had no idea how we'll build it. And that's where technology helped us do that. That's where robotics helped us create the outer facade panels. That's how we used different materials that have never been used in buildings, but more, let's say, on yachts or on boats, to be able to create a facade system that creates. And what you see on the outside are calligraphies of His Highness's quotes. And I want to share one quote which I think is quite interesting, which is, "We may not live for 100 years, but the creation what we create will live much longer than that." And I think that resonates with each and every one of you here, that it's really about what we leave in this world and how people will see it in generations or civilizations. And I think that's what the museum is. It's a symbol of the future. We see the future being discussed in the West and discussed maybe in the East, and I think the Arab world and our region deserved as well to have a voice into the collective future that is being discussed or developed. We worked on creating an experience which is relevant to people from anywhere from the world, the challenges that we all are facing or could face: climate change, energy, water scarcity, and as well one important thing, which is wellness. One of the main challenges that we are facing currently as humanity, but will continue to face, is how technology is impacting us as well. Whether it's from depression, whether it's from antisocial behaviors that are happening. And what we wanted to say is that the future is not necessarily just about technology. Technology is there to help us grow as humanity, to help us become better as a civilization. And that's the story that we want to share about the future and what the future is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Mansoori. Yuri, may I ask you another question? I understand we're pressed for time, and the question is a major one. You've talked about the stratification of society, and we've looked at the World Economic Forum and what they discuss at Davos, and they are talking in their report that the risk of cyber threats is higher than what you were talking about, the stratification. But I was really touched by what you've said about the fact that people are expending a lot of resources in vain, duplicating and triplicating those developments that they're working on. And some product lines have 10 or 15 different versions produced by different producers. That's a waste of resources. On the other hand, the president and the leadership of our country are talking about the need to ensure that we have technological sovereignty. Don't you see that there is some contradiction there. We need to be, on the one hand, technologically sovereign, and at the same time, remove that duplication. Isn't there a contradiction there? And how do we pacify those two contradictions? Thank you for this excellent question, Kirill. I'm sure that the technological sovereignty that we want to achieve cannot be achieved by just working on our own. We'll have to do this together with other countries. But on the other hand, if you focus on ensuring that the end users should have the sovereignty and security, that is achievable. But for mankind, that will be a step up. Because if you start developing technologies like these, they will be more like a distributed register, a file system, where you would be owning something together, but everyone will be owning a piece of that on their own. And when you move to this plane of technology, your life is changing. It's becoming very different. The government controls technology because it needs to control security. And to make those two things converge is one of the major challenges. I mentioned the messenger telegram. Let me make a side note. It is balancing between deciding on whether to provide law enforcement authorities the right to provide access to, let's say, letters. I think the citizens, the users, should have the right to decide that, to give those letters to someone, to governments like Russia or Israel or the United States. And then I will see that if somebody gives you the right to have control over the letters or the messages, that will give you the ability to see who is shunning that responsibility. We are talking about machine learning, that is also known as AI. Basically, you're working with the interface of accumulated knowledge. And people get connected to a computer, and very soon we'll be thinking about where we will be storing our ideas, our thoughts. And we may not have enough safe room for the photos that not to be stolen. But well, if you are in Russia, everything is safe. They are on the Russian servers. But these are the challenges that we face. They seem to be minor, but they are not minor. This is something that we need to focus, and we need to work on that together as the whole planet, with the countries that are willing to do that. We'll have to deal with that. We'll have to deal with those challenges, how to change our law enforcement, social interactions, and many other things. So we either roll back or we move into the future, where technologies will be serving people in a different way, where cities will be different, and where you will be able to move from point A to point B in Moscow in 7 minutes using a fast-speed vehicle. But you have to have trust in technologies. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that's what techno-optimism is like. And now I would like to ask you to describe the image of the future for the next 100 years in just one word. One word, Mr. Mansoori. Wonderful. Hope is a great word. Yuri, you. I'm an optimist, so in my optimistic world, everyone operates by the word together. Thank you so much. This round of applause is for you. Please join our discussion from where you are. We are waiting for our next group of speakers, and let's welcome our speakers now and thank them for their contribution. And we continue our plenary discussion, and we'd like to invite to the stage the rector of the Repin St. Petersburg Academy of Arts and curator of the exhibition Heritage for the Future, Semyon Mikhailovsky, and fiction writer from Italy, Mr. Roberto Quaglia. Please join us on the stage, and we'll continue our conversation. So, Marina, it looks like we are techno-optimistic, human-centric, and still, we have a positive attitude despite the problems. And I'm sure the representatives of culture will add more positive to our mood. Okay, let's welcome them with a round of applause. If I may, I would like to start with a question to you, Mr. Mikhailovsky. We want to inspire young people with the image of the future. so that they would be inspired by the idea that progress can be made today, and so that today's graduates would not have to worry about what they would want to become in 5 years' time, but they would rather focus on thinking about what their country is going to be like, or the world is going to be like in 100 years, and how they could be useful in that. Is that doable? Well, we need to inspire them, definitely. And we need to instill in them some great ideas so that they would have a good vision of the future, of their own, and of their own world order. And I'm usually a skeptic when I talk about the future. When you spend too much time thinking about that, you can go mad. So you have to distance yourself from that. If you only think about the future, you can go mad and, pull millions of people with you into that. But if you don't have the vision of the future, then you might immerse yourself into the minutiae of the day. And it's important to have the balance and the distance. These are natural, reasonable things. When people talk about the future, they are talking about it in such a way as if they've already moved there, and they are pulling people with them. And I believe that exhibitions like this are about creative people. They are about people having their idea of the world. They have their feelings, regardless of where they live, in Russia, China, India, Iran, and so on. And our goal is to support that and to realize that creativity is a gift. Our goal is to inspire people who are creative. But if we tell them, you need to think about the future, don't forget about the future, or John or whatever, and keep telling them that, then that might drive them crazy. I don't imagine how this could be done. So we need to find the right balance, the golden middle. We need to understand what is the ultimate goal of all this. And I think contemporary art has new tools now. It has changed completely. But it is not a shell that is important. It's the idea, the concept that is important. What is this all about? That's the question we need to ask and answer ourselves. So whenever you have an exhibition, you use contemporary art objects, things that are done in a non-traditional way. And we just see that this is something that is done by talented people, something that is quite interesting. And this is about today, not just about the future. And there's a difference between the conservative people and those that are looking out into the future. So we need to find the right trend and understand why we need to do this. And this is my counterpart here is a great writer, and we discussed yesterday what is the best city in Italy. Is it Florence or Verona? This city or that city? We had a long discussion about that. And at the end, we understood why this was going on. Why would you go to that city, or why would you go to this city? What is your goal? What is your main idea? And since we're sitting here with my colleague from Italy, I would like to say that they have a great artistic tradition, a great culture. And so whenever we talk about the future, we need to think, what are we going to do with this great Italian art, or with the great Russian tradition, or with the Persian miniature, or calligraphy? What are we going to do with all that? What's going to happen? That's what I'm failing to understand. People go to Italy, to be honest, not to visit the Venice Biennale. They go to Rome to see the monuments of antiquity. Or if they go to Venice, they want to see that great city. Swarms of tourists are there. They may not be too overly intellectual, but they want to see the great old art. Just leave them alone. Let them touch that art, the beauty of those wonderful things, and get inspired by those works of art. Because we have a lot of junk that is related to the future, but we have a lot of masterpieces from the past. Well, a lot of junk was generated about the future, empty things that we're looking at. Those that were imagined in the 19th century and the early 20th century. So the way that we're talking about the future is not something that gives us the past of the future. We have the right to talk about the future or the past. That's okay. But this is a separate genre, and we need to be soulful, and that's what we talked about. The soul was mentioned. There was an idea about that. There has to be a soul, and I really like that reference. That question about what's going to happen to the soul, and there's a major problem that, yes, Mr. Kovalchuk spoke about the soul. And indeed, this is not a path to the future, but an invitation. I would agree with you. Mr. Quaglia, let me ask you a question.
I know that many people present here grew up reading sci-fi. I mean, sci-fi that we had in the libraries, and it's international classics, and not only. And that's why Russians are so technically optimistic. And I mean, we saw this cooperation between engineers, scientists, writers, well, in the Soviet Union. What is happening now in the world, and what needs to be done so that together we'll create something more optimistic, including optimistic future? Thank you.
Once a great science fiction writer said something like, everything is impossible until it is done. So when we dream about the future, you know, something, the part of us which is on the more imaginative side, so science fiction authors, dream about plausible futures, futures that could be, not necessarily futures that can be. This is the job of the creators, the innovators, who actually have the skill to recognize what can be done, and they do it. But in a way, we both live in the same informational field. There is an informational field. On one side, you have the ones who do, and the other ones, you have the ones who dream. Science fiction writers dream. Of course, the quality of their dreams defines the quality of their writings. But they must be plausible, they must be coherent, they must start from a present which actually is real. There must be a good reality check on the side of the science fiction authors in order to project, extrapolate a future which is plausible. Now we are living in a strange period of history of mankind, where actually we see very rapid changes on various stages. Of course, we have an exponential growth of technology, which now transform basically our lives in a condition of perpetual future shock. Future shock was envisioned as a possible crisis for mankind, where people get disoriented in a too rapid change of reality, of too many progresses in the techniques. So, but we now experience a lot of also geopolitical changes and change of the shift of the world in terms of power and multipolarity. So I think that also the imaginative part, let's say spiritual in terms of imagination, it will necessarily become multipolar. And so I think that I refer also to somebody that spoke before me and mentioned that we could be at the verge of a renaissance of man. Actually, I would extend it to say that we are possibly in front of a renaissance of imagination, a renaissance of science fiction, as far as our work is concerned, and as a renaissance of art, because these are all fields of imagination. And as this kind of informational field is a kind of, Rupert Sheldrake created an interesting field, morphogenetic field, he called them fields, informational fields, where actually new structures of matter can be born, or new structures of meaning. So you have ideas spreading in different people at the same time in a sort of metaphysical way, not clear to understand how, but it's a kind of more informational field where actually the things happen. So if this kind of drive towards a decentralization in the terms of power, political, but also in terms of imagination, will go on. I think that we will really be in front of a renaissance of science fiction, which is absolutely necessary, actually, to solve some of the other problems that I heard in the previous discussions. So the problems of technological independence, which, of course, is absolutely necessary, because you cannot have a technology that can be switched off or controlled from other parts of the world. But this applies also on the psychological level and in the fields of archetypes, in the fields of mental technology, you know. So basically, to try to detach yourself by people that can switch off your mind from far. I don't want to sound too abstract, you know, but this refers to non-exact sciences like weaponization of psychology, of sociology. So basically, you know, these are just, you know, clues that I'm just putting on the table in order to see which arguments I think will be relevant in this kind of new renaissance of science, art, and science fiction.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Now, I would like to disagree with our previous speaker. I mean, everything that has to do with space, new technology, future. I mean, don't we have the kind of renaissance we're talking about in your field? Or perhaps AI will take it all and have it all? You were saying, well, perhaps we have different young people. You're talking about young people. Perhaps you mean young people who think about the future. And I'm somewhere sitting in St. Petersburg and think differently, like dormant. And perhaps you're just ahead of us, and that's okay. Well, as a form of discussion, you are somewhere in the future already, and I'm lagging behind. I mean, do you have any exhibitions devoted to the future? Yes, we did. Well, Italian futurists, future specialists, yes, we had an exhibition. You go to Milano and you go to a museum, not Novecento, but elsewhere. If you live in Italy, you go to Milano, not Sabazio, for example. Like back in the 30s, they were thinking about the future. They were thinking about perfect cities. My colleague, I'm sure, knows what I'm talking about. Well, I'm protecting an artist, no matter whether the artist is classic, traditional, or independent, no matter where he or she is thinking about traditions or the future. I think that no matter what the preferences are, it's important to maintain what you have. I mean, you have to respect the personality of an artist, no matter what the artist is working on. It's about emotions, pure feelings. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, that's what's important to me. When I was told, let's arrange an exhibition about the future, well, we could have mentioned artists from the 19th, 20th centuries, and they've been thinking about future. For example, take Italians, Marinetti and others. It was a movement in art. Then, later, there was something else. I mean, there are cycles. All of a sudden, people start thinking about the future, and then they stop. And then just go on with their lives, go with the flow, living in their historical cities. And then, once again, they start thinking about castles and something else, and then it calms down. So that's the beauty of life. Everything is developing naturally. I mean, the main thing is to have pure thoughts. Well, Semyon, the battle goes on, as they wrote in the books. and the interest in the future is very interesting. But you said we need to protect the artist. Well, very briefly, do we need to protect the artist from what? From technology? No, God forbid, not from technology. It's an instrument, it's a tool. I mean, this is silly. We're not crazy to say, no, you don't need to do that. You should not be involved in that. No, technology is key. You need to seize the opportunities that science has given to us. We need to understand why. What is the goal? What is the idea? If we talk about the future, then it's good to know why are we doing this? Why do we need to talk about the future? Why do we need to discuss it? Do we need to bring it closer? Do we need to talk about it? I mean, what is it about? So that's the crucial question. If you're creating something, then there must be an idea to back it up. And there's a form. We need to understand what is it all about. For example, you can create something, but why are you doing that? Okay, the main question for the future is to understand the goal. Mr. Quaglia, a brief question to you, and then we'll ask you to do something else. What about young Italians or youth that you communicate with? Are they techno-optimistic? I mean, as I said in the beginning, Russians, well, mostly, especially young people, are very technically optimistic. What about Italian youth?
Yes, I think that Italians are very the young Italians are very techno-optimistic. I think this is probably a trend all over the world. On the other side, there are other problems, of course, with the young Italians, but I would probably not go into that here in this session. But they're very techno-oriented, and actually Italy has produced a lot of excellent talents also in scientific field. Then we have other problems because maybe they have to leave Italy for then applying their talent, but that's not of interest in this discussion.
Round of applause to our wonderful speakers. Thank you so much. Now, Semyon, could you describe in one word the image of the future? You were talking about the goal, so how can we get closer to the future? Okay, allow me to deviate. I have an idea this morning. Roger van der Weyden, wonderful artist, he has a picture with Madonna and Saint Luca, and then they split into two, and they were separated. The two parts are one picture, and then it's back in the Hermitage Museum, and they put it back together. So the reunion of two parts of one picture. I mean, there was an artist, there was a beautiful woman, and now it's a picture. I mean, I just thought it was a good idea to mention this here. And now the key word is hope or belief. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Quaglia.
Does the word sense of wonder count as a single word?
Wonder, как чудо.
Yes, a sense of wonder, which is the sense of miracle.
Ощущение чуда, да, наверное? Прекрасно, спасибо большое.
Oh, thank you so much. That's an interesting idea. Thank you. Please take your seats, and thank you for this honest, interesting discussion. Thank you so much. So, dear participants, we try to make the impossible possible. Our plenary session is almost over. We try to cover all the possible topics with our speakers and even have an argument and even have a discussion. And now, in the next 3 days, we'll have more time. And in the final plenary session, we'll try and see the final results. So, thank you very much. So it was Kirill Tokarev and Marina Kim. Thank you so much and have a good forum.
Дорогие гости, большое спасибо, что приняли участие в пленарной дискуссии. центра Россия.